We've got Compass having layoffs, Redfin having layoffs, interest rates have risen. What is going on in the real estate community? I am super excited to have had this interview with Jay Thompson, former chief evangelist of Zillow. He worked there for 6 years. He is one of the brightest minds in real estate, a very good writer. He writes for Inman. And when I started this interview with him, it was meant to be a 30, 45-minute interview. And his story is pretty fascinating. So we put this into two different parts. This is part one, and it's basically the journey that he had before he got to Zillow, when he was at Zillow. And part two is going to be what's going on in the rest of the real estate industry, his thoughts, my thoughts, and what we think we're going to see happen in the future. All right, I am here with Jay Thompson. Jay Thompson is a contributing editor for Inman, as I was for a little bit, no, contributing writer, let me say. And he is a very well-known person in the real estate community. He worked for Zillow for a few years. We're going to get into the future of real estate tech companies, but before we do that, I want to talk about where your background was. And if I read correctly, you had a brokerage that was Thompson Realty. Is that correct?
Thompson's Realty, that's correct.
Yeah. And your kind of claim to fame, or how you became well known, was you started a real estate blog in 2005.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. PhoenixRealEstateGuide.com kind of it blew up. It got me on the map. So got a ton of business from it. Yeah. And basically that's why my wife and I decided to start a small independent brokerage, was we were getting more leads from the blog than we could handle. We were just letting them rot, basically. Yeah. So we thought, let's open a brokerage, let's hire a couple of agents, and that's what we did.
Yeah, cool. Well, so were you an independent agent before that?
Actually, I got licensed in 2004 and was with Century 21.
Okay.
And I was in Arizona at the time. And in Arizona, you have to have a sales license for 3 years before you can sit for your broker's license. Mm-hmm. But the plan from day one was to get a brokerage license and open up an independent, which is just what we did. So right at 3 years as a salesperson, as a licensed sales agent, I went to broker classes, got my broker's license, and we opened Thompson Realty probably 3.5 years after I first got licensed.
Now, I run a blog on both my Spyglass site and one on RealtyHack.com. And in this environment in Austin, it's real competitive to go for SEO, Google placement. Was that on your mind at all, or were you just putting your thoughts out there?
That's a great question. Originally, I started that blog because I like to write, and it was a writing outlet. Back in 2004, 2005, there weren't a ton of real estate blogs out there. There was a few, and there was a few big ones in the Phoenix area. And so I thought, well, when I was a relatively new agent, and I needed business, so I thought maybe I can marry this love of writing with and get some business out of it. But to be honest, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I think I write well, and that was fun to me. And I know for a lot of people would rather slit their wrists than sit down and try to write something. But I enjoyed it, and always have since I was a kid. And so I just started writing stuff that appealed to me. I was new to real estate, so it was all new to me. So I wrote about lousy lenders and great lenders, and just kind of how real estate worked. And as I got more into it, then I kind of self-taught myself some SEO, and it was different. This was, 17 years ago now. Holy crap. Mm-hmm. There wasn't as much SEO competition. It was still there. Google was important. I never paid a thing. I never did any pay-per-click or AdWords or anything like that. It was all organic search results. But I learned a lot. Like, I originally thought this blog needs to rank number one on Google for the search term Phoenix real estate. That was my first goal. And then I quickly realized that, I got to the first page on Google for that after a year or so, but that wasn't real where the money was. For me in the search results, it was much more, to coin that overused phrase, hyper local. Things I lived in Gilbert, Arizona, which is a suburb of the Phoenix metro area. So things like Gilbert golf course homes, as opposed to Phoenix real estate, big broad category. I went with Gilbert golf course homes, lake homes near in the East Valley of Arizona. Those are much more, long tail type search terms, but that's where the gold was, because I did much better converting someone looking for a golf course home in Gilbert than I did someone that just randomly found me through Phoenix real estate.
Yeah. Yeah. And what did you do before real estate?
Before real estate, I was in the semiconductor manufacturing industry, complete change. I worked in Austin at Motorola, way out on Ed Bluestein. I don't even know if it may be a parking lot by now. That was a long time ago. But I did that for years and years and got into human resources the last part of that 2-decade career in semiconductors. And the last 3 years, all I did was lay people off and shut down factories, which sucked.
Yeah.
Not why I got into human resources. And the whole time all my HR buddies were like, we're shutting down all these factories and laying a bunch of people off, and we're going to be the last ones left, and someone's going to boot us out sooner or later, which they did. So that's when I took my severance pay and started getting into real estate.
Yeah. So from 2005 to 2012, you were running Thompson Realty. And how did you get to work with Zillow?
That's a good question too. I wrote about Zillow fairly often on my blog because it was in the news. Zillow launched in 2000. I should know this. I worked there 2005, 2006. Yeah. So they were just starting up when my blog was starting up. They were in the real estate news. I wasn't a Zillow fanboy. I was certainly not a Zillow hater. I was kind of ambivalent, but the concept of, hey, here's a company that understands how to rank really well in search engines, and they want to let me put my listings on there for free. I like free. Free is good. Sure. I like the exposure. I've always been very open towards, get your listings out there, get them on the internet. I don't care where they are on the internet. Zillow, Realtor.com, my blog, the brokerage website, wherever, it doesn't matter. The more eyeballs on my listings, the better. So I wrote about Zillow frequently on my blog because they were always in the news, with this estimate. And then as they progressed, when they introduced agent reviews, that was a big brouhaha in the industry. Yeah. And again, I was a fan of that. I'm like, look, again, it's just more on free online exposure for me and my listings and my brokerage. So the more I wrote about them, the more me and people at Zillow got to know each other. Yeah. I met some people in person at conferences. I fairly quickly connected with Spencer Raskoff, who at the time was the CEO of Zillow. Yeah. And because he's a super social guy, he's all over social media, and he does all his own social media work. Nobody tweets for Spencer. Nobody comments on Facebook posts. Spencer does that. He doesn't have a person doing that. And so we just made a connection. And over time, that grew into a pretty good business relationship. I was never a premier agent for Zillow, but again, I supported the concept of online listings and that kind of thing. And I never had the angst that a lot of agents have towards Zillow. So it was early 2012, and Zillow hired the CEO of my MLS, the Arizona Regional MLS, the Phoenix area MLS. Zillow hired their CEO. So I did a little blog post about Bob Bemis, the CEO, moving to Zillow. And I'm not a journalist, I'm a writer. So, it was a casual interview. Why are you going to Zillow? What's going to happen to your spot at Armless? Tell us more about it. And every time I wrote about Zillow on my blog, I would always get a comment or usually a direct Twitter message from Spencer. Hey, thanks for writing about us. Appreciate it, blah, blah, blah. Well, it was about a month after I published that post about the Armless CEO leaving that I got a direct message from Spencer. He goes, oh, I feel like crap. I never thanked you for the article on Bob. And I was like, Spencer, you're the CEO of Zillow. You have better things to do than thank me for a blog post. I appreciate it, but it's no big deal. Yeah. And he DM'd me right back and he said, you should come to Zillow and join the fun. And my wife was sitting right next to me because we both ran the brokerage together. And I looked at her, I'm like, what does this mean? I should come to Zillow and join the fun. And she says, sounds like he wants you to work for him. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I DM'd him back and I said, yeah, don't tempt me, with a little smiley face. And then I left it at that. And I swear to God, like 2 or 3 hours later, the phone rings and it was Spencer's admin who said, Spencer wants to bring you up to Seattle to talk to you. Can you come? And I was like, well, pay for the flight and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, sure, I'll go talk to Spencer. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I didn't think it was a job interview. I was just going to go talk to Spencer, because Spencer did that kind of thing a lot.
Yeah.
He would bring people in, get their feelings, see what they think. And I just thought that was it. And when I walked into the Zillow office in Seattle, someone from HR walks out and says, here's your interview schedule. And I look down at it. There's like 7 people I'm interviewing with, the co-founder, Spencer, C-level executives, other people I didn't know. I was like, holy crap, this is a job interview. And I don't even know what position I'm interviewing for. And I've done 0 preparation, none, because I didn't know what it was. But apparently it went pretty well, because a few weeks after that, they offered me a position, and that was a big, giant decision. I had this very successful brokerage in Phoenix. We were small. We were like 30 agents, but we were the thing I'm proudest about as a broker is we were profitable every month except for month number 1.
Yeah.
We fairly recently expanded, opened an office in Tucson, Arizona. Things were going great at the brokerage. And I was like, God, do I leave this and all the blood, sweat, and tears I put into Thompson's Realty to go off and work for Zillow? And they kept calling and we talked, and I ended up taking the opportunity, and they hired me as their director of industry outreach.
Yeah. Gotcha. And, what do you think about the people that are the haters? And before I ask you that question, I just want to be fully upfront, is that I used to be a Zillow hater. Okay. I did. And I was on the board of directors at Austin Board. Yeah, you probably seen replies in some of the message groups. And then I think what happened with me was a couple different things. Was that I realized that the industry is going to evolve, right? And that it's better to be partners with these. And if you're so resistant to change, and you're going to just kick your heels into the ground when everything is evolving, then you're not going to take a part of that evolution, right? So I ended up becoming a premier agent, and then I ended up becoming a flex agent, and we have the best stats in Austin for Zillow Flex, and I've got more to tell about that. But how did you manage what were your thoughts on when people were kind of Zillow haters at that point?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that was a big part of my job as the director of industry outreach, was just that, reaching out to the industry. Another big part of my job that people didn't see when I was at Zillow was I was an agent. I was a broker owner, and Zillow hires really smart people. Most of them are very young, and a lot of them, and I'm talking about everybody from, web developers to management to salespeople. A lot of them just didn't have a lot of understanding about how real estate works. So that's part of what I did at Zillow. But the other far more public part was responding to Zillow brand mentions, particularly in the social space. And there was a couple things that I think were and still are the issue. It's gotten a lot better than it was. This is back in 2012. But Zillow has changed so much since I left almost 4 years ago. But the thing that seemed to be primary amongst the Zillow brand detractors was really a lack of understanding about what the company was doing. And part of that's on them, the brand detractors, but a big part of that's on Zillow too. Yet we at the time it was we needed to communicate better what Zillow's plans and intentions were. There was a lot of fear. And I'm not saying every hater was scared of Zillow, but it was just, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD is a thing. If there's this big behemoth, coming over the hill.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people like, oh, Zillow's coming to take our jobs. Some of that, or a lot of that, I think, was baggage from the founders. Rich Barton and Lloyd Frank started Expedia.
Yeah.
And
right.
got credit or blame, however you want to look at it, for cratering the travel agent industry. Now, there's still travel agents out there. I use a travel agent all the time, and I use them for their expertise and their knowledge, just like what people use real estate agents for.
Right.
So they didn't eliminate travel agents, but that baggage is out there. Rich and Lloyd started Expedia, really took it, the internet kind of crushed or started to crush travel agency. They're going to do the same thing to real estate agents. And that was never the intent of Zillow, and still isn't the intent of Zillow. So there's that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? That kind of leads people to just question things. And there was believe me, I mean, I got brutally attacked online when I worked for Zillow. I mean, I got death threats from people because I worked for Zillow, which seems crazy to me. I mean, why would you hate a person that you don't know simply because of who their employer is? I mean, sometimes that hate runs deep.
Yeah.
My family got threatened. There were some horrible things that were said. I had a heart attack shortly after I started working at Zillow, like a month after I started working there. And I was off for a few weeks. I came back, and one of the first things I got was this. I got a lot of anonymous email from, people with email addresses like zillowsucks@gmail.com and things like that, because people aren't decent enough to put their name out. But right after the heart attack, someone, I think it was actually on Twitter, someone said, "Why don't you do us all a favor, have another heart attack? Maybe next time the results will be different." I was like, "Whoa, really? Wow. Crazy." Someone once told me, probably the thing that pissed me off the most in my Zillow career was when someone messaged me and said, "I know where your pretty little daughter works, and I can take out my frustrations on her."
Oh,
I was like, God. Okay, people always said, don't take things personally. Yeah, you can't not take that personally, right? You're talking about my daughter, who at the time is like 18 years old. Anyway, so it's out there. But there's a lot of people like you, Ryan, that first, didn't like it, didn't understand it, whatever it may be. There's this thing coming at us, but you just nailed it. Change is the only constant in life and in this industry, right? And if you don't, and that's not to say you've got to buy leads from Zillow and become a flex agent and, do all this. I mean, there's a bazillion very successful real estate people that have never given Zillow a dime, but you need to understand what it is that they offer and how to leverage it, right? Because if Zillow has one thing, whether you hate them or love them, you cannot argue that they have consumer eyeballs on their website. And a bunch of consumer eyeballs. Yeah. And why not take advantage of that? If you can, there's lots of things you can do for free on Zillow. You can buy leads from them, but you've got to at least understand the Zillows and the Realtor.coms and Redfins and, Open Doors and all these new people or not even new, but just change that's coming into the industry. Yeah. You got to wrap your head around that. And again, you don't necessarily have to use it all, but you sure better understand it.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's a free country. It's a free marketplace. And, I think, if any of us would be in a position to build a company, it would be that would be that big. It would, if we were in their shoes, it would be, it'd be kind of messed up to be that adamant about it. And I'm going to share my experience. Even when I was a premier agent, I still had reservations about Zillow, right? And so I think it was in February of 2021. Yeah, definitely. That's when it was, when I became a Flex agent, and I still have no reservations about it. And so part of Flex is they meet with you once a week for 6 months. And that experience for me was amazing. So now we meet every 2 weeks with my Zillow advisor, Todd, and he's amazing. But one of the things it taught me was that Zillow is so smart at figuring out the kinks in a sales process, from when a call comes in to met with to writing offers. So like in a traditional sales funnel where it's not as dialed down, okay, meaning we can look at our agents and say, okay, this person gets people off the phone and into a showing, but they're not that good at writing contracts. Or this person is really good at both of those, but they're not closing the contracts. And so, what that did for us personally is, Zillow is not my only lead source, is we started using Octum, which is a Ylopo product, and implementing that to our other lead sources. And Todd, our guy, has just been, really open and helpful, and I can just tell it's a partnership, right? It's not, and Zillow, of course you could, I think the big fear everyone has is that at some point, they're going to turn into a brokerage. I think that they realize that that's not where it's at. Of course that could change, but I just don't see it happening with the way my interactions with them is. All right, what do you?
That was probably the single biggest concern that I got from feedback from when I worked for Zillow. And I haven't worked there for almost 4 years, and people will still come out and attack me. They're like, you're the guy that said Zillow will never be a brokerage. And then they went and got brokerage licenses, blah, 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 and started selling houses, doing the iBuyer thing. Well, their iBuyer business is gone. Okay. It shuttered, which is very un-Zillow-like.
Yeah.
But what is very Zillow-like is Rich Barton, the current CEO and one of the co-founders, does, and he preaches it. He said it from his pre-Expedia days. He likes to take big swings. To use a sports analogy, right? You swing for the fences. And what happens to big home run hitters in baseball? Sometimes they connect and launch the ball out of the park, and sometimes they strike out. That's just what happens when you swing big. And Zillow Offers was a strikeout for Zillow. It's rare, but it happens. And they had put so much into that. But even during all that iBuying cycle that they were in, you didn't drive down the street and see Zillow Realty signs on buildings in strip malls, right? They didn't have offices. They didn't have agents. Most people aren't aware of this. The reason Zillow got its first brokerage license during iBuying was because the state of Arizona's Department of Real Estate said, if you want to do this iBuying thing in Arizona, you need a brokerage license. And I came from the Arizona real estate market, and I know people at the Arizona Department of Real Estate. And I think, it's just my opinion, but I think the Arizona Department of Real Estate said they won't do this, and then we can get rid of all these phone calls we're getting about Zillow. We'll just tell them to get a broker's license. They won't do it, and we'll be done with them. Well, again, you said it, and I've said it. Zillow's not dumb. There's some really smart people that work there. Yeah. And they said, okay, if we have to get a broker's license to do iBuying in Arizona, we'll get a broker's license. It's not that hard, right? Anybody can do it. So they did, and other states did the same thing. And then, we could talk forever about this. Zillow struggled for years to get good listing data for their site. And they were inking deals with MLS by MLS by MLS across the country, 1, 2, and 3 year data sharing contracts per MLS, which involves negotiations and renegotiations and renewals. And this happened after I left, but I think someone at Zillow finally said, you know what? We've got a smattering of broker's licenses for this iBuying thing we're doing. Let's just get a broker's license in every state, and then we can start pulling IDX feeds straight from the MLS, and we can go from having 700 listing suppliers to having one.
Right.
And that's what they did. They still have their broker's licenses, but I agree with you. I don't think you're ever going to see a Zillow Realty office, right? With agents going in and working in the bullpen and answering the phones. That's not how they work.
Well, and you said it right, like what big swings, right? Well, the big swing that I am seeing is the investment into the agents, the investment that they're putting into my firm as well as every other firm. So that, to me, that's an indicator that they're going to keep going that way. Okay, so I want to just tell if anybody's watching this on YouTube, if you would let me know your thoughts on this. I'm sure we're going to get good, bad, and the ugly, and then we're going to stop this video if you're watching, and there's going to be part 2 coming up after that. You and I are going to keep recording, okay? So do me a favor, like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.